6:05 here, letting everything get seated and get rolling. Mayor, you good over there?
Yeah.
Right. So we will come back in and try to get going here and call this meeting of code and zoning to into order tonight. As I'm looking around, instead of calling roll, I think we've only got one member absent at this point. I have not heard, and I didn't do my due diligence to touch base with everyone today, to be honest with you. But I believe, if I'm looking correct, Mr. Walsh is the only one. Oh, there you are. Richard's over here. So there we go. I guess if you want to take a minute or two, look over the minutes from our August meeting, I'm sorry, and see if you have any additions or corrections, or if you're good with them. I will find out exactly who did write these for us. I'll try to take care of that tomorrow, so we can have that added to them. But I believe Ms. Thomas wrote these for us.
No, I did.
No, you did. I apologize. There we go. Thank you. That's what we were
Well, I
checking.
had 4 pages worth of notes, so I tried to distill it down into something.
Mayor, we were just discussing while you were over there discussing. We were trying to come up with it, remembering who had done that part for us. Thank you, Mayor. So there we go. We've got the mayor that has written these for us.
But yeah, if any changes need to be made, let me know.
Any revisions, any pieces? Approved as presented for Mr. Butler. Can I have a second on that? Mr. West with a second. All those in favor of the minutes being approved as written, say aye. All right, any opposed? Motion passes and moves on. So, as we come in our discussion here, the real goal for tonight was really to, Mr. Edwards had kind of asked us to separate the two, the last meeting we had, that being, when I say the two, that being residential code and commercial codes. And tonight we really want to just look at the commercial codes. Next week we're going to discuss Mr. Gill, you might remind me one more time of the man's name. I did not write that down. It's coming with the, I know they're coming with our state fire marshal's office.
Yeah, Gary West is coming from Tennessee Fire Safety or Fire Sprinkler Association. They have a live burn demonstration where they have 2 rooms set up and they actually set both on fire. One with sprinklers, one without. They have clocks, timers, all of it temperature rated, and it's just a demonstration so you can actually see firsthand what fire sprinklers do in an actual fire situation. We met Mr. West and Brian Biggs, I'm sorry, got his last name, Brian, anyway. They're
Biggs, Brian Biggs.
Yeah, they're going to be, they came up and looked at the situation. We decided we needed to meet here because of the number of people we're going to have to try to maintain social distances since the courthouse is not going to be available. And they're going to, right now the plans are to put the trailer at the back down here on this alley, and that way we can just go right out for that demonstration. They'll have a meeting first with a brief presentation and a question and answer period. It's supposed to have representatives from the insurance industry here and fire industry, fire marshal's office, and sprinkler contractors, so that the questions the commissioners have can be answered by people that have the answers. And so that's on the 22nd, starting at 6 o'clock. That's a Tuesday, and I guess that's a week from today.
That's correct.
A week from today, and really everybody on the commission, we all really need to make an effort to be here. Any contractors that might be interested, or anyone else, we've invited the water board and people that I guess you'd say have an interest in it is what we're trying to have anybody here that wants to come. Not really a public event. We're not really inviting the public per se, as much as the stakeholders, I guess, would be a good term to use for it. Put a lot of effort into getting this here. They're doing one this week up in Gatlinburg, I think. They're going to be up there this week. And they did one, I think, a few months back, actually on Times Square in New York. So it's a pretty big deal for us to be able to get them here, and that's why I really wanted to try to support that. I think that'll give us the answers that we're going to need to make an informed decision whether we want to keep the sprinklers in the code or take them out. And they can answer everybody's questions probably a whole lot better than any of us can. That's when we're doing it, and that's one reason that we wanted to kind of separate these two things. And Sam, if I speak out of turn, jump in here. That you have basically residential codes or single-family duplexes and townhomes. Then everything else, anything else, this building, a skyrise, a warehouse, a storage building, all of those are covered in the building code. Everything except residential. Residential is the only thing that has its own code. And so we can go ahead and talk about, we call them commercial, but it's everything except residential, which encompasses commercial and other business occupancies, things of that nature. And then you've got, of course, the main two is your building code and then the residential code. Then you've got the minor codes under that, such as plumbing and mechanical and fuel gas, and that's this stack of books. Everybody thinks the Z code is a book. No, it's volumes of books. And so what we're hoping to do tonight is to have everything on the ordinance that pertains to all the codes except residential approved and ready to go. There was some question on some of the appendices that we really didn't have time to go into last week. Is that
Very well covered, Mr. Jewell.
is that what you were asking for?
Exactly what I was asking. As we're going through it going forward, Mr. Jewell was really gone over the pieces that we're talking about here. What we came and separated the two meetings for that reason. In the future, we'll look at the residential at a point, or as you said there in this case, after that sprinkler meeting next week. So that gives us the separation. Sam has asked us to look at in our last meeting to look over our a few appendices, a few additions there that we were looking at in discussion and wanting to make sure that if we went on and got those approved for him, that we could get those into the commission's hands and approve and move forward with that movement. Anything else, Sam?
No, that's it. I've got them separated here. This is what we're looking at tonight. There's not, most of these books, they are what they are. The state just accepted them. There's some appendixes in them that I added in, just which are like charts and stuff that help do all the configurations and stuff. This is the residential code. So this is the separation. Residential for the housing, it has its own book. This is what we're looking at tonight. So,
Any questions? Mr. D?
The question in the future, are they going to try to get sprinklers in the home, in the new home they build?
Well, that's what we're looking at. If we require it, they'll have to.
Okay.
That's the question, whether we want to require the builders on new construction to include residential fire sprinklers in the build on a new home. It has nothing to do with existing homes. It's strictly on new build on homes. And the residential code, we don't need to spend a lot of time on it tonight, but the residential code is drawn up based on these houses, the way they're built in that code, with that in it. So when you pull that out, there are some aspects of it that probably would have been stricter if you didn't have that made into the code, or the assumption that that was what the code was based on.
basically, this entire book's assuming you are doing fire sprinklers.
Yes.
So everything in this book, if we don't do fire sprinklers, is not necessarily correct.
The state legislature, and I'll give a little brief history on the state legislature.
Mr. Chairman, it's still, I don't disagree with you, but the state has given the option to separate, so that's why we're really having this discussion.
Right.
The state has given the option, the state has said, you may opt out of the sprinkler codes. That's why we're having such a
The
firm
state,
discussion going forward.
right, the
before
state,
we go
and
into discussion.
this has been done, it's not just state Tennessee, it's other states have done this. But they were really lobbied heavily by the contractors to take it out. They were given a lot of money to take it out. The National Contractors Board gave the state board a lot of money to lobby this. And basically, they took it out, but they left the option open for us to make a decision. They didn't just say, we're taking it out. They took the direction that they're gonna leave it up to each jurisdiction to either put it in or take it out. So that's why we're having the discussion on it, because I don't want to use the word they caved, I'd say they succumbed to the pressure from the contractors board to take it out, but in their wisdom, they didn't completely take it out. They passed the buck on, like they do so many times with the state of Tennessee, they passed the buck down to us, and that's why we're looking at it. And I'm glad that we have that option. And they made it they made it pretty strenuous, so it does have to pass by supermajority, has to be a 2/3 vote. With our commission, that would be 14 commissioners would have to vote yes to keep the code intact with the sprinklers in it. But the thing I want people to realize, and I'm not trying to take sides, please, is that it's in the code. You're taking something out that's a part of it. You know, you can approve it in its entirety, or you can approve it by taking that part out. Now, we can't pick and choose what we want to take out. This is the only thing they've given us any options on as far as taking out, other than the appendices. The appendices are optional things that each jurisdiction decides whether they want to enforce those things, such as carports, such as, name some other ones, help me with some. Tiny homes.
Tiny homes.
Things of that nature. So, you know, if you're not dealing with it, you don't want to, you don't have to put it in, but if you think you're going to need it, you put it in. It's written there, but it's an optional part of the code. That's when we talk about appendices, that's what we're talking about.
Give you an idea, most appendices are just charts, like Appendix F is high radon potential zone 1 counties. So it gives you a list. So you can use this chart to say, hey, this is our county, this is what it says is our radon for our county.
And you're saying that those appendices are in the residential code that we're talking about. So let's
yes, but all the books have appendixes, and that's a good example of what they are. They're just charts for you to use to get more information to use the book.
You presented some appendices that you wish to add in, not all that you wish to add in, is correct?
I did present some that, but I was told last time we didn't have time to cover all of them. But I have the books. If y'all do want to go through each and every one, we'll discuss them. But most of them are just charts. So.
And most of them.
Let me ask what I was saying there. Make sure I'm clear on that. I thought you were presenting certain ones that you were wanting input, not that you were wanting to put input all that were there.
I don't want to input all.
There's some that the state, in what they adopted the appendix statewide as well. So most of the ones he has are the ones that the state adopted statewide that we must do. But there was a few that we looked at that we felt like that we'd either had before that we were carrying forward, that we were already there. But I don't think there was anything new.
The only one that's new is tiny homes. And the only reason why I included that is because I get calls constantly about, can I build it? There are requirements for tiny homes, like you have to have a licensed contractor build it. You can't just build it. It has to be built like a regular home. It has to be on a permanent foundation. It has to be built on site. If it is built off site, it has to still be inspected by a building official. It's being built on site, and then when it's delivered, it has to be confirmed that it is mounted and done like a normal home. So there are standards. The IRC has that section that tells you basically the dimensions that the engineers have agreed that a tiny home can be built to. And it's pretty much the same as a regular home, it's just like there's a couple of inches on, your ceiling heights, it can be a little bit lower, your rooms can be a little bit smaller. It changes things by inches, but it allows you to get to the square footage that would be actually considered a tiny home.
And the reason is that wasn't already adopted. It's new. It wasn't in the 2015, it wasn't in the 2012, it's new to the 2018.
That's why that appendix is not right there. Mr. D?
My question is, if they adopt what Franklin and then we approve the ordinance, what would be the effective date? I know that would it be a time, you give enough time to people, or would it be effective after
Be effective whenever you adopt that code, make that code effective.
In other words, we.
Well, I mean, it can be written that it's effective when it's adopted, it can be a certain date, you could make it October 1st, January 1st, whatever you make in your adopting document is to when you would specify when the code takes effect. Typically, you make it upon adoption.
Good question, Mr. Burmaster.
On that adoption process, would that affect permits that were bought prior to that, or is that only in the permits?
I would not assume so. I would assume that everything that's active will stay the way it is,
That's what I thought.
and everything that's new will change.
Right.
Well, that would be a huge influence.
And that is spelled out in the code, that specifically when you adopt a new code, new construction from that point, not something that was already permitted, whatever it was permitted on, whatever code was in effect when it was permitted is the code that it would be inspected on. So it would strictly be the new codes going forward from that point in time that you make that adoption.
One question. If a person is doing duplex, is that a commercial or is that be residential?
That's residential.
So, Mr. Jewell, I think you said earlier that single-family dwelling, duplex,
And
and
town.
townhomes were in that piece of
So
the
you-
residential code that we're looking at. So, right now, let's do, I know tonight, I appreciate the conversations we're having, we're still really centering them around residential and around the fire sprinkler piece, where as the separation, that's why one reason we try to separate these two, so that Sam can get we can at least get the commercial code to, and I say commercial, as you said, the building codes here in this case, to the county court and get that moving at least in that direction point, for any commercial side, anything other than the, as we just said, the residential, the single family dwellings, the townhomes, and our duplexes. So we're trying to separate those two. That's kind of the reason we call this tonight. And then next week we're going to have that as Mr. Jewell said earlier, we're going to have that fire sprinkler display on hand for us to ask a lot of these questions that we're really asking on that part too as well. I think the fire marshal's office you said would be there as well. So there'll be a lot of individuals that can certainly answer. I mean, Mr. Jewell's done a great job answering. Sam's done a great job answering tonight. But there'll be some other people that can help him out with those discussions next week, I think. Mr. Burbank.
With regards to the commercial codes and the additional appendices presented by Mr. Edwards, I have researched those appendices. I have looked at some building that's going on, not only here in our county, but other counties, even in other states, and I don't see that what he's asking for has a great deal of effect. Most of what he's asking for is already in most of the buildings. With that, I'd actually like to make a motion. We send the commercial codes forward as presented.
Now, with that piece, is that stated well enough with commercial codes?
I think, or I would say the ICC family of codes, with the exception of residential, because we're the ones that we've got named. We've got them named in the resolution. It says which ones they are. But everything that's there, we already have. You're just updating from the 2012 edition to the 2018 edition. And the only appendices that's any different is in residential. There's nothing, I think, in that. So
So at this point, that you would
I think
say,
the motion would be to adopt this ordinance on this list of codes.
The only thing that's changed from this from the last meeting is 2 words, and we discussed them at the meeting about excluding that section. It's a misunderstanding.
this is that same ordinance that you passed, you gave us last month.
Yeah, I just changed 2 words on it.
We can be more stringent than the state. We cannot be less stringent than the state.
Any particular areas in here that are putting us in a spot that we are more stringent than what the state
No,
is?
not that I'm aware of.
That's right.
We're following their guidelines to a T, but we're accepting a few charts that they decided they didn't need. So,
What charts are they, those again, that they decided they didn't need?
I don't know the specific appendixes that are different from what they requested. I would have to crunch and see which ones they mandatory and then which ones I wanted. But it's like fuel gas lines, sizing. It helps you determine what size you need for how much flow. That's an appendix. They didn't accept it for whatever reason. Maybe they just use it and assume they don't need to. But I'd rather it be on black and white that I'm going to be using it than it not, and I just use it.
Understood. Any questions there? So the motion, you want to restate that motion real quick, Mr. Bookman?
Motion to send the ordinance to adopt certain 2018 ICC codes. This is ordinance 129, 2016-09. I'd like to send that forward to the county commission with our approval.
We have a motion to send the ordinance as stated in front of us here forward to the county commission for our approval, with the approval of our codes and zoning committee. A motion on the floor for that piece. Do I have a second on that? Mr. Burton has seconded that motion as stated. So as again, make sure that we understand what we're saying here. We are approving as a committee to send this forward to the board with our approval. And as we said, we are separating the residential within this piece at this point. That is for a later date. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Just make sure we're clear on that. All those in favor?
Just one thing I'd like to point out.
Sorry.
Just one thing I'd like to point out is on the energy code, the state right now allows us to stay on the 2009 code. And that's what we're doing.
We discussed that in the past.
And the only point I want to make is we may have to come back if they change that, if they go ahead and adopt a 2018, we may have to come back and amend it.
Only for that energy code.
Right. Only if they do that.
Any more discussion? I apologize for that part. Any more discussion on the motion on the table? Yes, sir, Mr.
I would
Baldwin.
like to point out, for Mr. Dickey, if you're reading there, ordinance becomes effective 90 days after the first reading. So there is a 90-day period there for it to take effect as well.
And mainly that, I spoke to actually the state health official, asking him his opinion and stuff, and he provided me a copy of the one that he actually typed up. And he said putting that in there makes it to where they can't kick the can down the road for a long period of time. It gives them time to make a decision.
So we are approving this piece as a committee as written. Any more discussion? Motion second on the floor. Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion as stated, let me know by saying, by a raised hand.
Guess I got to vote.
You are a part of the committee, yes, you can. So with seeing that part, any of those opposed would like motion? None seen. All right, so that does get us to the point where we have sent these codes onward to the commission in our next committee meeting our next commission meeting to hopefully see where those go for Mr. Edwards there in this case. If there are any more we want to discuss in terms of next week's meeting?
I want to real quick say, I don't want to get into it because I don't know the answers either. I would encourage everyone to strongly encourage them to write down the questions as you think of them. Because every time I think about it, I come up with more. Write them down so we can get these answers, because the people will be there to answer it. And this is probably one of the more important things that we're going to discuss this year, in my opinion.
Agree 100%. I mean, this is something that changes your county. It's a legacy type thing to, whether you're going to go forward with this or not. It's been talked about a lot, and like I say, we've got a big decision. There's a lot of pluses for it, and there's some minuses, and it's up to us to make the best decision for the people in our community and our community going forward. Sometimes things are not necessarily popular, maybe with everyone, but we have to just look past that and look at the overall picture and make a decision on
I'd like to make a comment. And in order to pass this ordinance in the code of John, I think we need to do it because it'll save lives if we put sprinklers where they're supposed to be.
Well, I think everyone's going to see the data that it's absolutely irrefutable that it can save lives, it can save property, and it can save money. There is an upfront cost, and there is a time factor that with contractors, everybody doing anything, time is money. But I think I think they would understand the why once they see the demonstration. That's why I'm encouraging as many of them as we can contact to try to be here and let them be here and be a part of this equation. Not trying to do anything in secret. We've talked about this for months and months, literally years and years, and just want us to have accurate information to make that decision.
Am I correct in assuming that, I know it's expensive to put in, but this is more feasible now that we have that new kind of plumbing line that either freezes or expands, where in the past, I think people were really hesitant to put plumbing in their ceiling because
Right now,
through the weekend and it got cold, but with this new, it's more feasible, would it not require that kind of plumbing?
Now, it's a special pipe that they have to use. It's a special pipe that's approved in codes. Like this system in here, you see these heads, these visible heads. What they use in residential now has a cap on it so that it just looks like a button on the ceiling, and the heat actually makes that cap drop down. And the piping is, what is approved now is a PVC type pipe, and it's painted orange so that anybody that sees it knows that it's sprinkler piping, it's not water pipes. So, but that's the kind of thing they will explain and the kind of questions that, you know, I'd rather an installer to answer the questions, what it costs, how long it takes. From my data, from what I've in meetings about things like this in past, a crew of 2 men can do an average house on a rough end in 2 hours. They typically do 4 houses a day as far as rough end, and once it's finished, they have to come back in again to do the final things. But it's not something that takes a contractor weeks to do in a typical house.
Do they do every room?
Yes. Typically, any room over a certain size will be done. Some people, there are some hybrid systems where if you have like a garage car underneath your house in a basement area, that you could do just that. Some jurisdictions, you know, have different laws on things like that, but typically they do every house. 90% of your home fires occur in the garage or the kitchen area, and that's the areas you're trying to cover. Don't think I'm out of line with that, am I? Okay.
The two things I want to impress Mr. Oliver said, I know they're very expensive. I think that's one of the fallacies that we need to get answered, because quite honestly, my research shows they're very cheap. 2,200 square foot for $2,800 on average. I actually heard a figure the other day of $1.10 a square foot, which is lower than I've known, and that was here in Tennessee.
Yeah. It
Depends on the
ranges.
area. But the other thing I want to point out, if I can remember what, if we don't put this in the code, if I understand correctly, you can still sprinkle your new home, but he can't inspect it. So you can put what you want to in there. If we put it in the code, he inspects it and it's correct. That's kind of the reason it probably needs to be in there if we're going to move towards sprinklers. You think you'll see in this demonstration, I look it up on YouTube, they've got the very trailer on there. Temperatures, they've got the thermocouples of 3 layers. It shows the temperatures, how quickly it builds, how quickly it pops off, what little bit of water it uses, what little bit of damage it does. And then within, I think, 7 minutes, it burned the room down on the other side. And they actually said they're going to let it burn to flash over, which is like fireball type stuff.
Fire department will actually come in and put that room out. They'll have 3 men geared up to actually extinguish the fire.
And that's where the sprinkler code, well, the other thing I want to press on you, from a fire department standpoint, this code was written, as he said, on the assumption that sprinklers would be installed. Part of the problem with fire departments and fighting fires is there's no sprinklers, but you have fabricated beams. You have certain building material that's allowed because it was written for sprinkled homes. When it isn't sprinkled, now the home becomes dangerous. When it does catch fire, it burns quicker, it burns hotter, it won't hold the load, it's much more dangerous. I think they showed that sprinkler popping off in a minute and 14 seconds. At 7.5 minutes roughly, that's when flashover hit the other room. So to be honest with you, with the codes written the way they are, we should have had for years sprinklers already. My questions are going to be simply like, do we have the water pressure everywhere? Do we have maintenance? Do you have to replace heads every 10 years? Is there an additional cost associated? I've got a lot of those questions myself, but I am a proponent of sprinklers, especially here in our county, the way we work, the way the homes are laid out. I honestly believe this will work, but I'm not sure. And that's why I want to get these questions answered. The contractors may have questions that none of us have thought about. I've heard contractors say it costs too much. I've heard them say that your insurance will go up. I've heard all stories, but I want to get these answered. Mr. Jewell has said, well, actually I think Gary West said he was bringing insurance people with him to answer these.
He asked we thought the biggest insurers in our county were. We told him Farm Bureau and State Farm.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want the local agent to answer these questions because they don't know. A lot of times they don't know. They're not dealing with this. It's not in their area. So he's going to try to get a representative from the company to come to speak for Farm Bureau, State Farm as to what your actual savings are on their policies, whatnot. And the thing it's hard to put an exact dollar amount on that because it depends on what your ISO rating is where your house is located. If you're sitting in a fire department and you've got an ISO of 4 or 5, it's not going to save you as much money as if you're out in the county with 10. So all of that is subjective. So much stuff is site specific, but they can give you a range. It's like they're not going to tell you that it's going to cost $1.35 to put per square foot to put in a house. That may be the average. Some houses, because of multi-levels or whatever, it may cost $1.50. But they know what that range is, from high to low, $1.10. Average right now in the Nashville area is $1.25, $1.35, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, you know, most of the homes we're doing 1,500, 1,700 square feet. Probably 80% of the homes are 1,500, 1,700 square feet. You can do the math. You can do the math. You can do the math.
$255 home you breaking for $2,000.
Yeah, you're talking, and they're saying, well, we can't sell it, we can't add that to it. You think, okay, you're gonna pay $250 or $252, that's a deal breaker? I don't think so. I don't think so. You make a bigger decision on the carpet cost than that cost.
If what we're hearing
I
is
think,
right.
I was about to say, I think we got some other conversations we still got to hear from people on that part. And
Sure.
I also, Mr. Buckman, you brought up one point that is a question I've already had myself to ask, and that's where we're going to have that water available. What pressures do we need? What's available in our county? What do we have? Are we going to have some people there that can answer that part?
The water board's supposed to be there as well.
Water board is going to be there now.
Yeah. Well, Tommy will definitely be there. And the others have been invited, but I think from what we've been told, rule of thumb, if you can take a shower, you can run a garden hose, you can run a fire sprinkler. They don't, it's not like the movies. We're fighting Hollywood here, guys, is what we're fighting. We're fighting ignorance in Hollywood. In Hollywood, if they were filming in here and somebody popped that sprinkler head, it'd all go off. It don't work that way. It don't work that way. It's just that one. And even though you've got them in each room of your house, unless you've got a fire in every room in your house, it's only going to be in the room that the fire's in. And that's the beauty of it, is whatever damage you have, it's contained to that one room. It's not through the rest of your house. So I don't know how to explain it any better than that.
Understood.
But what you're seeing with the fire service industry is going from suppression into prevention, and this is on the prevention side of that, with smoke alarms, sprinkler systems, all those type of things.
So
But it's one thing that we can do. We have control over this, and it's our decision to do one way or the other. I mean, one way or the other, we're going to make a decision on it. It's just a matter of which decision we think is best for our community.
So we've got those decisions, we've got the opportunity, as you said, it's going to require a 2/3 vote in our commission as well, later on. So there's quite a bit going on. Hopefully our commissioners will show up next week and be at that piece. At this point, I think we've got a lot still to question, and we can sit here and talk on those things for quite a while, but I appreciate the conversations and the discussions we're having, but I think we've got the right people. Mr. Jewell spent the time to get the right people coming in, and I appreciate you taking that time to get those people coming with us, to give us that opportunity to see what's going to happen and what opportunities we're looking at other. So I think that's a really good opportunity moving forward for us to look at. That'll be next Tuesday night again at 6 o'clock. That is Tuesday, the 22nd. At 6 o'clock. Hopefully, it's going to be right here. We're outside this building. I think Mayor, you all say, or Mr. Buckman, you said
We'll be over here on Front Street.
That's the plan right now.
As it stands. As it stands. So that's the plan at this point, and hopefully we can get those right people to get to the point moving forward. I do appreciate us getting at least the one piece moved on to the commission so we can have that discussion going forward. That was really the whole goal of tonight, to get that hopefully hashed out, and we seem to have come to a consensus on that one very well.
Can we talk a little bit more about the residential, just a little bit, so you can look at it, be thinking about it? If you notice, a lot in here deals with the energy code. Now, we can adopt the 2018 energy code, but this is one of the things that we're trying to do for the contractors. We're trying to hold those costs down. So if they start saying that we're just trying to gouge them, no, we're not trying to gouge you. We're trying to hold these things to the 2009 level, so that you're not having to use 2 to 6 walls, you're not having to use more insulation overhead, you're not having to do these expensive tests. And, so just bear that in mind too. Like I said, that may change if the state, that was being pushed really hard by the last administration, presidentially, FDA, EPA, those people. This bunch now are a little more lax on it, shall we say. So a lot of the codes, particularly on energy codes, in the subsequent additions from 2012, 2015, and 2018 were rolled back on some of these things, but not to the 2009. But what you get is you've got a curve on energy. The more insulation you stack in something, the more energy efficient it is. But you get to a point in that curve that you're here and you can double it and you're only here. It was a very steep curve till you got to that 2009, and now these other things are just little bitty. But now that little bitty over a whole country means a lot, but it's also, is it worth that little bit more, or that lot more, to get that little bit difference? From the federal standpoint, over the whole country, yes. From an individual jurisdiction standpoint, probably not.
Completely understood. I appreciate you adding in that piece. But as we say, this is ready to move on from here, and I appreciate that conversation. I'm sure you'll bring that same part back up in our commission meeting in the future, and move that on from here. We will get back together with another meeting, ready to look at residential in a time after we've had our meeting and had this discussion and all
Do
these
you want to
questions.
go ahead and set a meeting for that, meeting date?
I want to look at my calendar before I do it, just to be honest with you. I got lucky tonight with the ball game was moved, because I was going to have to find someone to take my my concession stand duty for me tonight, so it was moved into Macon County. So I need to look at my calendar first.
Okay.
I did that last
I
time.
think, Mayor, you see a reason that we can't hold the one that we recommended until we get the other one, resolution on it, so that we can adopt both at the same time.
No, that's up to the committee, if you just wanna hold off and do it next time.
I mean, I'm saying not have this on September's agenda, the one we approved tonight. Let's wait and see if we can have both of them, so that the adoption date on both coincide, because there's no way we're gonna be able to have the residential ready for September
You're
meeting.
talking about the full commission meeting, is that what you're talking about?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, you're
I
the
kinda
chairman,
thought
put
we
it on
would-
there or not, that's up to you.
I kind of recall this meeting together tonight so that we can get that ready for this September's.
Well, we can, and just make it easier for him and for people, the contractors, to know when that adoption date. We can roll the adoption date on
Like I said,
residential back.
we can change it to match.
From 90 days to 60 days or whatever.
We can write it into match.
It's not gonna pay very much. I mean, commercial, I just put a line.
Mhm.
It's so little, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll move that one on forward, we can get that.
Just was wondering.
Understood. Understood. This one doesn't require a 2/3 vote, correct?
Not the one we approved tonight,
That's correct.
that's just a simple majority. Even the other one, if we adopt the 2018 code in its entirety, it would,
Only if we adopt it with the, including the fire sprinkler system.
right, strictly because that's the way the legislature is written, enabling legislation.
Okay. Yeah, well, in my opinion, we'll move this one forward, personally, and you make that choice, but that would be my thoughts from here.
I think I don't see this being a close vote one way or the other, either we'll do it or we won't do it, but
Understood.
I may be wrong.
We'll move from there. So with those thoughts in mind, I guess, any other conversations we wish, Mr. Allen?
Well, speaking to the, since this is codes and zoning, I want to point out that we've done this nice work on our downtown, and it'll get nicer as we do some landscaping, let's say upholstery, landscaping. However, I want to point out, and I don't know how to address this, I think it would come under this committee as opposed to building committee. You have people in the downtown area who are not cutting the weeds in front of their business buildings. Now, I've already written in the past about people who don't keep their yards clean. But you look across from the post office, there are buildings there, and they're not keeping their weeds cut. And it's coming up to the sidewalk. Now, here's our problem. We spend a bundle between our own money, but really the state spent a bundle to make our downtown look nice. And we have one business who has a crappy sidewalk and they don't keep their weeds cut, and we need to address that. Now, I'm not saying we need to address it right now, but you drive by, next time you drive by the post office, look across the street, and you see weeds growing up in the sidewalk. And we're going to have to address that. And right now, likewise, the lot behind the old bank of Hartsville is being cut by a local resident because the owner is not keeping it cut. And we need to address that. We're going to have to make people in the downtown keep their property looking nice, or we've wasted all this money to make our downtown look nice. You know what I'm saying? And I don't necessarily want you to address it now, but I want you to be thinking about it, because that is going to be a problem. It's like you live in a nice house, and somebody buys a house next to you, and they don't have it nice, and it ruins your neighborhood's property value. I mean, they make your neighborhood look crappy. And we do all this work for our downtown, and then have one business owner not keep their property clean. That is that's bad. So I just want to be, I don't know whether it should come under this. I think it should under this committee rather than the building committee, but that's something we need to address.
I guess that's something we can address in steering in the future and see where we can take that, or
I think it would go to this committee.
that's what I would thought too, myself personally.
And I think in a way, Mr. Oliver, we're trying to address that. We're looking at right away, trying to get Sam some help in his office to give him more time to address these type issues. And we're having, one thing that we're looking at also is we're looking at our ordinances, what ordinances carried over from the city, which ones didn't, if we need to redo them. The mayor's been working with our county attorney on those type issues. There's a lot of gray area there that we have to do our part to nail down, but there's a lot of legal questions that it needs to be done correctly.
You see, I know you're right, and I 100% agree with you. However, 12 years ago, 14 years ago, when I was elected to the commission, that was the same problem. And we have not solved it yet. Sam?
You're good, Mr. Oliver jumps on that high horse, and it's hard to get him off.
It is.
Codes and Planning Trousdale County website, you go to Codes and Planning tab, There's a complaint form on there. I don't share names. If I get it in an email, I will investigate it. But I have to get one. So you put the address, which property it is, who owns it. If you don't know it, just put which property it is, but I have to get a complaint form. So you put those complaint forms on whichever properties it is, I'll investigate it. But I'll let you know up front, it might take time. So for one, it's based on the schedule. For two, I try to be understanding to everybody. So I'm gonna go out and talk to that person, ask them the situation, ask them why. I'm gonna do everything respectfully so that they work with me, not me force them to do it. Okay? So that takes time. I will give them time to fix the issue or figure out why it's going the way it's going. I don't know if y'all noticed the White House in front of the county building. Grass is cut. And it's getting cut regularly. It's not as much as I would like, but it is getting cut. So it does, talking to people a certain way does work. So submit the complaint forms and I'll take care of it.
If you're having trouble finding addresses, you can find those with, using the Tennessee Property Bureau app as well. Addresses and names of property owners.
Then one more real quick, Mr. Buckman should answer me this. On our signs we have to have for our address, does that include downtown businesses, buildings? Because I have a gas station over here, and I don't know if I need to put an address on the street or just is the building address on it?
Written countywide, so.
Countywide, okay. I was just curious, I was gonna ask.
I think it can be on the building though, is that correct? If it's visible, is that right? We talked about that.
It states that the postal box, if you have a postal box, it has to be on both sides. And we've got somebody at the county building that has a postal box that has 3 on the same post. In that situation, you're gonna have to they make these like placards that you can put underneath the boxes that you can say this address, this address, this address is on this driveway. But when the driveway splits off and goes to whichever house it is, there has to be a post there saying this is that house. So if you don't have a postal box and it's some of these things have PO boxes or whatever, put it on the building.
I think it's as simple as if they're trying to find 300 East Main Street, is there a 300 when they come down East Main Street that they can see? I mean, if they're going to 3220 Highway 25 West, they go down Highway 25 West and they see 3220 on 3-inch reflective letters or some way, somewhere. You know, in town, it's obvious, you know, you're 20 feet from a road, you're going to see if it's contrasting letters 4-inch high on a building, you're going to see it. You know, the thing is, and the thing people need to ask themselves, can they pull up to my property and know what my address is? Can they see it at night? Is it reflective? Is it large enough? Is it visible from the road? And I think as long as anybody meets that benchmark, they're going to be okay. You know, it's just, if you're driving down your road and here's a driveway and you have no idea what the number to that house is, that's the problem.
Then it is.
That's the problem. It's a big problem.
I think it's only addressing that.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's the main thing. If you feel comfortable that your house is addressed where somebody can find it at night, then they're probably okay. And we're not the only ones dealing with this. I put one on today from another state on my Facebook page. Mm-hmm. Everybody thought it was from here, but it was from another state. Mm-hmm. Dealing with the same thing. You know, but it's that was the way they put it, was simply, you're driving down the road, do you know what this house is? And that.
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple.
With the goal in mind of safety.
Yeah.
Being able to get to the location. I know it may be a little bit of a disconnect right now to get it taken care of, but it's, the whole goal and the whole term was safety.
I don't want to, you have a white building, put black numbers over that garage door.
That's all you're
Plain as day.
I just know if I had to have something on the road or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm going to give you a for instance. I don't know whether all you know where Sycamore Lane is, but it's a dirt road. It's off of Canoe Branch. What is it, 11, 12 trailers back here?
Something like that.
Not one of them had a number on them. The police officer spent 40 minutes the other night on an address. I'm not sure they ever really found it. Nope.
That's the
Not
problem.
one.
I agree.
had
We
a
were
number.
trying to address those issues to
But
safety and for.
I am pleased, I'm
Oh
tickled
my
to death.
goodness.
I mean, it's daylight and dark, the difference, the way people have responded to this and what you see already. I looked driving in tonight, and I didn't see a single place between my house and here that didn't have a number out there or on their mailbox. Now, some of them are right side by side, and that didn't, well, which one's that? But I'm saying, there's some tweaking that'll have to be done, of course. But as far as the public has responded very, very well to this. They truly have.
When you're speaking of the mailbox now, I think that ordinance was written, if I'm quoting, tell me if I'm wrong, Sam, only on the mailbox if your mailbox is on your side of the same side as your home, correct?
At your driveway.
At your driveway.
Correct.
At your driveway.
At your driveway, but they don't even know which driveway it is, so.
Yeah, not across from your driveway,
Right.
on the side of the road, at
Right.
your, just making, just trying to make sure, is that correct?
Yes, what I've been recommending to people that have been calling in, if their mailbox is across the street, go ahead and do the mailbox. It's like, you can buy an entire pack for $5. At least the postal person will know that's your box. But go ahead and put a post at your driveway, a little 4x4 post at your driveway saying, this is my driveway.
You can put it on the mailbox, but that doesn't cover it if your driveway, if your mailbox is correct.
You can
On
have
both
both
sides.
places.
I don't disagree.
On both sides.
Yeah, correct. Both where it can be visible from either direction they go, that's correct.
And maintain.
See, the postal regulations say that it has to be on the side of the mailbox that the carrier comes from. They don't require it on both sides. They actually prefer it to be on the front flat. But
We've got the purposes there, and I think as you said, they're well, it looks easy around town, most people have adapted well to it. I'm sure there's some.
they're
some
getting it and
problems
they
there.
understand it. Once it's explained to them, so this is to try to save you. You do.
As we move forward though, I think it's been a good move for us, and I know there's been some complaints and whatnot, but
Stupid. Why wouldn't you want somebody to find your house in an emergency?
I think more often we don't think about that emergency, you're right.
Well, I did receive a call the other day from a lady saying that she understands why we did it now, because she actually needed ambulance out there. And it took them a while to get it done. So she called and said, just to tell me, I
That stuff,
understand.
that thing should have been written 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Amen.
Fortunately, it is in and done today at least, right?
And people are still bitching about it.
Well, I think we'll always have complaints, and we just deal with the complaints. And
Because
I think
that's
that's part of what we're talking about the fire
that's
station.
my postal box, that's my driveway. You can't tell me what to do with my postal box.
Well, we're just trying to keep you safe.
Well, we did.
I think we're just trying to keep you safe. You can choose not to, you can pay the fines. You don't have to, just pay the fines, right? But,
$50 a day, so.
as I said, it depends on what you're willing to pay, right?
With that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to carry, consider ourselves adjourned.
Thank you.